We are Hunt and Darton. She's Darton.
And she is Hunt.
And we are artists and your hosts of IPTV.
We've been working together for over a decade, making work with people across the UK and internationally, but always hyper-locally.
Always, always. And we are here because just when you'd got used to things, the Arts Council have gone and changed everything. I mean, everything. Why did they do that? Why?
It's okay, Hunt. Relax, don't freak out. We are here to talk you through the new investment principles the Arts Council are suggesting should be at the heart of everything we do.
These investment principles, or IPs, as we like to call them, are tools for making art and doing what we do well. And you will definitely need to talk about them when you're applying for funding from the Arts Council.
This builds on what you already do, hopefully. A lot of this might already be done, if you're that good.
Most of us naturally care about people and the world around us, and that's what they're about, really. Welcome to IPTV. Over 4 episodes, we are going to chat about the 4 investment principles. Talking frankly to brilliant people across the sector, we will unpick and demystify what it all means, what we might need to do, and for all the right reasons.
And we're doing that from 4 different locations across the UK, inviting guests from that city or region to join us on the couch.
There's also an Arts Council representative, of course.
Because it is all their fault.
Yes, because it is all their fault. So where are we today?
Colchester, in this super fancy building, home to contemporary art, cinema, and so much more. And winner of Art Fund Museum of the Year 2021, it is, of course, Firstsite. From here all the way up to Colchester Arts Centre, who we've worked with since the beginning of our practice, ages. This city, or town, it's important to say that, it's controversial, is packed with art.
And who do we have with us today? And what's happening anyway?
Well, we have Krystal, Vittles, Deputy CEO of Suffolk Libraries, Anthony Roberts, Director of Colchester Arts Centre, Vijay Patel, Artist, Writer and Neurodivergent Access Consultant, and from the Arts Council we have Abid Hussain, Director of Diversity. We're also joined for some much needed fuel by the owners of Bacana's for some of Colchester's finest. That's Donna and Becky. Their scones and their sandwiches, they're delicious. They're going to come on later.
So Darton, what are the 4 investment principles?
Well, they are inclusivity and relevance, dynamism, ambition and quality, and environmental responsibility.
It's a lot, isn't it? It's quite a lot. It's quite a lot to take, and I think we need to break that down. Let's just focus on one at a time. So let's have a look at what is the investment principle we are dealing with today.
Inclusivity and relevance.
Do we know what this investment principle means?
Yes, we do.
Do we?
Not exactly. More kind of?
Yeah, okay. So it's probably best that we say that's where we're at with it now.
Yes, I think that's probably best.
Yeah. Okay. So from what we understand so far about this investment principle it's about people.
Yeah.
In fact, it's about everyone and how we can make sure we're including everyone from our communities and make work that's relevant to more and more people.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's about all people feeling like they belong.
So everyone can make and enjoy culture, and culture is for and about all the different people who live in our country, and how that makes culture itself more exciting and, well, you know, better art.
It's true. So our high street work, so we've got Hunt and Darton Cafe, we've got our Radio Local project, and now we've got Kids Business. We basically take our work direct to people's high streets. We make it appeal to local families, and then by doing that, it naturally begins reflecting the demographic of that place. If we spend enough time there, which we do, and collaborate through activity, the work is always beautifully beyond anything we could do alone.
Very true, and it's always a very proud moment when you can stand back in one of our many empty shops that we've taken over, and the action is happening independently of us, you know, and you can see that a genuine hub and community has started to evolve.
It's true. And for our latest project, Kids Business, we're kind of directing it at children and young people, which is the first time we've done that. We're throwing the transformation of an empty shop over to the boundless imaginations of young local minds, creating and running their own fully functioning business on their high street. It's a highly creative an entrepreneurial project.
It is. And this co-collaboration and co-authorship becomes a hook for engaging all of the families and the wider community. It can be witnessed unfolding via shop windows and then by visiting the shop to experience the new business run by kids. By its very nature, it becomes an endearing, charming and surprisingly entertaining safe space for all.
And it's all for free. And without even having to talk about how to make it inclusive, its very structure allows this. And the handing over of the authorship, it can't help but then become relevant to those involved.
But how do we do this even more? And how do we begin to look at inclusivity and relevance in every aspect of our organisation? What happens throughout venues and museums? What access and sense of belonging might need to be addressed further? I think it's probably best that we talk to these guys about this now. They probably know a lot more than us.
Probably. Welcome everyone. You all okay there? You look okay, you look good, you look great on the bench. We're going to start with you, Krystal. Deputy CEO of Suffolk Libraries, an independent charity that runs Suffolk's library service to nurture children's literacy, support vulnerable people and promote well-being across Suffolk. It is Krystal Vittles.
Libraries are at the heart of communities. What do you think could happen to make sure they are relevant to everyone in that community?
What you said there was about communities, and communities are all about people. And when you were given an explanation of what this investment principle is, you mentioned people. And so we are something for everyone. We're a universal service. And so in order to remain relevant, we need to absolutely reflect everyone in our communities. And when we say reflect, that means everyone can come in and find something that absolutely resonates with them, you know, whether that's through an activity or working with partners or even through our stock. So we can do this in a number of ways, and what we've been doing in Suffolk is really think about our offer and doing something that we're kind of calling thoughtful programming. So that's either sitting down as a team together and really thinking things through about how we can make something really reflective and inclusive, but also working with partners, but most importantly working with our communities. But at its very heart is all about talking to people, finding out what they want and then creating that for them, because that's what we are. We're a public service, so we create stuff for people so they can enjoy it.
How do you address diversity in your team and organisation as a whole?
Where we have started is asking ourselves some really tough questions. And I think if you look at Suffolk Libraries now, if you look at our, not so much our frontline teams, because I think we do have quite a lot of diversity in different ways reflected, but I think if you look at us as a senior leadership team, I think we're very white. We're very able-bodied. We're very much not reflective necessarily of the community. So we're doing a lot around that in terms of having an accessibility and diversity action plan and framework. And how we're approaching that is that all of our staff, all of our colleagues are owning that. So it's not just top down, it's actually from the bottom up as well, and kind of meeting in the middle to come up with tangible things that we can do. So that's not just about the offer that I was saying for the communities, but also what can we do internally around recruitment? How do we make it easier for people to come into Suffolk Libraries who have a different experience to, say, someone like me? You know, I'm a white cis woman, you know? So how can we get people in that way? So there's all kinds of things, but it's based on this framework, and again, go back to that word, philosophy.
And what do you think the impact of this investment principle might or should have on the sector in general?
It should mean that all libraries reflect their communities. We should absolutely be a mirror for everyone out there. So everyone making those changes together in order to have an experience for people where they feel welcome, they don't feel othered, they feel excited about coming to a library. You know, they don't feel nervous because they worry about walking in a space that's not for them.
Ant, we're coming to you. So Anthony Roberts, Director of Colchester Arts Centre, never knowingly understood.
Never.
It's the little church with the big attitude deep in the heart of Essex, with the passion to present new work, bring great bands and comics to Colchester. Their business is all about fresh ideas, new acts, new art forms and vibrant new ways of working. Ant, sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it does. Please carry on.
We've got a couple of questions for you. What initiatives or programmes have you or will you put in place to make sure the Arts Centre is inclusive and relevant?
Well, I think, you know, it's more about keeping fresh ideas fresh. You know, as the arts business, our currency is ideas and forward thinking, and I think if rather than writing kind of dry strategies, I think if you keep a creativity of approach is probably a good starting point. And some of these things are really serious, you know. I mean, the Black Lives Matter thing that kicked us all into a different way of thinking. I mean, that guy died, you know. And I went to the Black Lives Matter thing in Colchester, and it was, you know, it was tough, it was depressing, it was hard to hear, you know. But so what, you know, as an organisation, little charity organisation, what we do, how do we respond to that? And although those things and the stuff that we have to deal with, like living in this patriarchal, colonial, heteronormative culture, is like, you know, that's a challenge in itself. We can't change that by tiny micro actions. But as if you bring ideas forward, our currency is ideas, then I would say the thing is don't be intimidated, be creative, be playful. Be playful with it, you know, have fun. Take risks, don't be scared. Don't be scared of getting it wrong. Take some risks and put some things out there.
How do you begin to engage parts of your community in the cultural activity that might not have been included or overlooked previously?
Well, you've stolen my thunder, because I was going to talk about kids' business. And what I like about it is it's not just going down the usual paths of recruiting from schools. In working in Clacton on the high street, that's the important part, and not going into a school and saying, well, boys and girls, you know, we have a really interesting thing today, you know, to give them agency. But I mean, there are other ways and other things we've done. Homeless, people affected by homelessness, you know. I mean, they're never going to buy a ticket and come to see the Slits at the Art Centre, or, you know, whoever, really. They're £16, £17 a ticket, I don't think they are. So a way of working with them was a project that, you know, the format we picked up, stole from someone else. But you can distribute cameras to people affected by homelessness. I mean, you don't randomly do it. Work with local charities, work with people, and then collect their stories through their visual eye. And we made a calendar out of this, and we had an exhibition of their work, and it was really interesting for me, and that opened up all sorts of different spin-off conversations. And so, you know, we live in a garrison town, working with the army. We work with, this venue itself works really successfully with refugee communities. You know, if ever there's a problem, I always think, get an artist in. Get an artist in, because they'll, you know, go out the door and come in the window. They'll open it up differently.
What kind of things encourage people over the threshold, people that might not have felt the Arts Centre was for them?
Change the threshold. It's not all about making things free either, you know, it's free. I mean, that is really important, but it's the way you make things free that doesn't kind of like stigmatise or... so we do a pay what you can afford night for stuff. And that's like works better than just saying it's free. I mean, you can say to people, thank you for coming. If you don't know what you can afford, give 1/100 of what you've earned. So if you've earned £500, put £5 in, but if you haven't earned anything, don't put anything. It's guilt-free as well as being free, something like that. And then that changes the whole gig from a transactional thing, there's a ticket, here's the gig, to a personal thing. We're all on this journey together. Changes the dynamic.
Amazing. We are going to move on to Vijay.
Yes, we are. Welcome, Vijay. So Vijay Patel is a performance artist, writer, and neurodivergent access consultant based in London. He crosses forms from live art to performance art and queer club and cabaret. And the work they make predominantly surrounds cultural identity, making autobiographical political work to shift perception and uplift marginalised intersectional identities. So Vijay, what has been key for you in developing your practice?
I think for the first few years, I would say it was support from organisations like Ducky, who kind of allowed me into the nightclub scene and to explore making work as a queer person and as a brown person. So really starting to explore intersectionality within my identity. And then I think when I got to a point of where I needed to apply for funding for future projects, you know, funds like the Arts Council and applying for project grants was really useful, because then I can expand and work with larger teams and embed more care and more support and more access into the work that I do. So I think it's been a process of like discovering what my needs are and what I really want to do. And when the pandemic happened and all of the work in which I made in theatres was lost and was changed, I think having grants like Developing Your Creative Practice was incredibly useful for me, because it allowed me time and space to think about how I'm going to be more sustainable in the future, how I'm going to centre other people from marginalised backgrounds, underrepresented communities who don't often engage in culture and the arts, how I'm going to make my work and my practice sustainable for me, but also making sure it's relevant to as many people as possible. And hence why the Neurodivergent Access Consultancy was added to my bio. Neurodivergent Access Consultancy came about because I'm an artist who uses an access rider, and an access rider was a way in which for the last 3 or 4 years I've been communicating what I need when I work on projects and when I do anything in a space with other people. And from that lived experience of using one and practicing with one, I've made sort of toolkits and guides in which people can make their own.
What experiences have you had sharing your work that directly challenges people's perceptions?
For example, Pull the Trigger, which is my first show about being an Indian shopkeeper and also trying to be a queer artist at the point when I was in my emerging stage. I think I challenged a lot of perceptions from my own communities of Indian heritage as well, but also from white British communities who didn't know anything about the Ugandan Asian expulsion or migrant stories and why Indian shops existed in that way, in that cultural way, as part of a big fabric of Britain and all over the UK. I think this whole investment principle is about allowing people to share their stories, allowing people to talk about their stories from whatever background they're from.
How can we evolve the right language and ways to approach complex issues around inclusivity and relevance?
I think it's speaking to as many people as possible, that we're making sure that we're listening to people saying, what are your barriers to applying to us? Or what are your barriers to working in this way? It's making sure that we're talking to people of all backgrounds and that everyone is included in their voice to shape how things go forward. I think that needs to happen and continue to happen across the sector in all ways. I'm making a show with my younger brother who's autistic. I'm autistic as well, but for me it's about the intergenerational perspective. So he has a very different perspective of autism that I do. I grew up in London. He also grew up in Tendring in Jaywick, and that is a very, very different experience of a background. So it's making sure that we are being accessible around language for working class communities, people of all backgrounds, so that we're not immediately closing somebody out because of language barriers or because of where they're from.
Welcome back to IPTV. It's exciting.
Well, something has happened, it's quite obvious, but we
if by magic
have had a delivery and I'm very excited and I'm happy now because the scones have arrived.
And Bekana are here.
Bekana are here, that's right. We are delighted to welcome Donna and Becky from Bekana's. It's a cafe in the heart of Colchester, and if you want to go, which you should, it can be found at 7 Crouch Street. So welcome onto the show.
How do you make people feel welcome at Bekana's?
To us, it's just natural. We talk, we'll have a laugh with them, have a joke, but we also respect their privacy. So if they want to bring a book in or their paper and just want to sit quiet and have a cup of coffee, that's entirely up to them. You know, we won't interfere with that.
We do see a lot of lonely people come into the shop on their own that have either sat and chatted with us saying they've lost partners over the years, so we know they're on their own. So we just sit with them, we'll have a drink with them and we'll chat and they'll tell us about the good old days, and it's just lovely.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for bringing everything down. I think you've made our panel incredibly happy. We're going to release you back into Colchester, because without you, what is Colchester? I don't know, because you just do so much good stuff.
So welcome back to IPTV. We're going to go over to our Arts Council England representative now. That's Abid Hussain, who is Director of Diversity. Welcome onto the show, Abid.
Thank you.
It would be great to hear your thoughts on everything kind of so far. There's been quite a lot of discussion. And perhaps any further words of advice on inclusivity and relevance?
If I was talking about my reflections, if this was an episode of Sesame Street, we'd be talking about the letter P, because we've talked about programming, people and places. And I think people at the heart of this, and the different perspectives we bring into our work. And I guess for me, the perfect example of this is my first visit to Colchester in about 5 years. And the people that you see walking down the high street, do you see them in the venues? Do you see them in the galleries, in the libraries? And if you don't, why are they not coming in? So that's something which is really powerful for me. Programming is a really key part of our work around inclusivity and relevance. So whose stories do we tell? Whose talent do we see? My first experience of libraries was the first time I heard and read stories that reflected my parents' tradition. So I think that's really important. And I guess that's really at the heart of inclusivity and relevance, irrespective of who you are, where you come from. You kind of feel that your story belongs in the work that we're talking about. So I guess that's my key reflection from the conversations we've had so far.
Has anybody any questions for Abid?
One of the things that I think's tricky to quantify is you read all the literature and the protected characteristics. One thing that doesn't feature in the protected characteristics is class.
We talked about language earlier, and I think when we're working around diversity, it's so easy to get bogged down in language, and I think if we just start talking about people, it's a much easier way of doing it. And I think about 2 years ago, I wrote a blog for the Arts Council around being from a working class background, and actually that defined my upbringing, probably more than my race or any other kind of protected characteristic if you're looking at it from the Equality Act perspective. So at the Arts Council, I think we've always been very clear that our definition of diversity goes beyond the legislation, because if you just work around legislation, I don't think you really capture the magic of why we do the work that we do. And class and socioeconomic background is a really powerful element of that, and it's something we're now asking organisations to give us information on in the same way that we've done around race, disability or sex. What I don't want with our inclusivity and relevance principle is organisations only respond to it because the Arts Councils ask them to do it. If that's what happens, then I think we've all collectively failed in our work. And for me, I think what's happened with inclusivity and relevance is we've brought communities into it. We're talking more about workforce, leadership and governance. So for me, it's about people, it's about power, it's about building relationships with people who we've historically neglected. And I think too often we've superserved a minority of our audiences. And we've talked about audiences a lot in the past, but if someone isn't in your audience, how do you know what's happening? And one of my reflections, I guess, as I was listening is if you operate a building or run a building, if people are not coming into your space, how do we leave our spaces and meet people where they live, where they work? And we just saw a wonderful demonstration of that when the ladies joined us to talk about what they're doing. So I think it's about a change of culture, and then you start talking about if that doesn't happen, then what happens in terms of accountability. But I think we have this agency now at the Arts Council to say this is what we want organisations to think about. It's just adopting a different perspective to how we do things.
What has ACE done and what are they going to do to make the application process for funding more accessible?
If I can be honest and candid, I think we need to do more. So I think there's a journey that the Arts Council needs to go on. So we're doing things, but we could do things better. And I think that's been a real kind of important part of the last 2 years when we've started to work a bit differently. And the introduction of our investment principles, we've started having conversations with people that we've not had conversations with previously. So just to kind of share a couple of examples, we provide pre-application access support. All of our application forms are available in an accessible format. But going beyond pre-application, if an artist has access requirements, we can build those costs into their budget without kind of impacting on the timelines for us to make a decision. Those are small things. We've just appointed a team that's working solely on access, just to make sure we're making that process more accessible. We've started talking about language a bit more differently, so we're talking about neurodivergent communities in a much more clear way. But I do think there's so much more we can do, and part of what we want to do with the investment principles is start a conversation. So if this work encourages people to reach us through social media or colleagues they know working at the Arts Council, it's the only way we can know there's bits of what we're doing that isn't working, and we need to continue to refine it. So I think we've made good progress, but I don't think we're where I would like us to be. And I think until we get to that point, we can't be satisfied.
We're coming very near to the end of the show, but to end, we have one more question for you, Abid, and it was prepared by a young person earlier today.
Hello, I'm Anissa, and I have a few questions. How do we make sure we make these important changes in our work organisation and with our communities with honesty and not apply quick fix under pressure that is not appropriate or makes people feel worse, even if the intention was meant to be good? And do you prefer broccoli or whisper?
Okay, I will answer the more difficult part of that question first. I think honesty was a really key word in that question, and I think as we start talking about inclusivity and relevance, we need to have more honest conversations, conversations that might make us slightly uncomfortable because we hear things we don't want to. We published Let's Create back in 2021. It's a 10-year strategy. So I would say to any organisation in the sector, there is no quick fix. If we try and do quick fixes, we're going to try and get things right, but you could actually end up frustrating the very people that you want to engage and support. So from my perspective, I think it's have conversations, bring people in, be prepared to listen to things that might sound challenging or uncomfortable or difficult to do, but that's where I think we can really harness the power of arts and creativity to make that difference. With inclusivity and relevance, it's much more tailored, so it will look different depending on the work that you do. It's going to look very different in Colchester to what it looks like in Birmingham or Shropshire, and we have to be okay with that. And I think progress will look different for different organisations. So that would be my kind of key message. The really difficult question now, broccoli or whisper?
Very important.
Now, broccoli is the king of vegetables, but I'm from Birmingham, home of Cadbury's. So it's going to have to be whisper, I'm afraid.
What is the best thing about this investment principle?
I think it's just making us really look at ourselves in a different way.
New conversations.
It's thinking about how we can centre this within everything we do so that our work is relevant to more places, more people, people with different backgrounds.
It puts people at the heart of everything we do.
Very good.
Very good. So if this investment principle was an animal, what animal would it be?
It's going to be a sloth. And they may not agree with me, and it's a weird thing to say, because sloths, they are slow moving.
It's not popular at the moment.
It's not. I'm going to get them there. It's slow moving, but they keep going. And what sloths do, they come out of their trees and put themselves in mortal danger to do the stuff they need to do, like feed and go to the toilet on the ground. So they're brave before they go back up into their safe spaces, but they keep going.
Sloth? Sloth?
I'm gonna match your sloth and raise you a chameleon. Whoa. So for me, it's a chameleon because depending on where you are, you adapt to your environment.
Anyone else?
I'm gonna kind of say something similar, no, different. I'm gonna say a tortoise, using the tortoise and the hare kind of story. Yes. If you're the hare, then you're gonna go too quickly. But I think this investment principle relates to the tortoise going at slow and steady pace and
winning.
Always getting there, but getting there in time.
Yeah. Very good. And
Moth.
oh,
A moth. Underrated.
Is that because it's like
They're underrated, the moth. It's like everyone thinks of butterfly, don't they? You know, but the moth is like
More humble.
humbler.
Great stuff. And despite my reservations, it's time for Darton's IP takeaway.
Inclusivity and relevance. If you don't like people, and we mean everyone, don't make art. If you do like people, great. Make art, but make sure you never stop finding more people to make art with.
Great. And on that note, it's a thanks very much to everyone here. This was IPTV. Goodbye.